ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you all to this panel discussion on outlook for EV business in India. CERCA feels privileged and honored to have with us today a very esteemed panel of industry leaders and captains who would be discussing EV business outlook in the country as India moves towards electric mobility. I welcome you all to today's panel discussion. Before we start this panel discussion, let me briefly introduce the panelists to today's discussion. We have with us today Mr. Arun Duggal. He's an experienced international banker, having served the Bank of America for 26 years in Hong Kong and Tokyo, and as the CEO of Bank of America in India between 1998 and 2001. Currently, he serves as non-executive chairman and the independent director of ICRA, ITC, Jubilant Pharma, Singapore, and IIT Delhi Endowment Management Foundation. Mr. Duggal is involved in several social and educational initiatives. He's the founder of Center of Excellence for Research on Clean Air at IIT Delhi, now renamed as Arun Duggal Centre for Clean Air, in recognition towards his commitment and contribution to clean air efforts. He's also the founder of Women on Corporate Boards program in India and a trustee of Chennai Mathematical Institute. A former alum of IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad, he is also the recipient of Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad. Mr. Naveen Munjal is a well-known name in the automobile sector and currently the managing director of Hero Electric Vehicles Private Limited, which is a part of the Hero Eco Group. He has been an advocate on climate change and zero-emission mobility, and as an entrepreneur, Naveen's leadership and vision has been widely recognized in shaping the Indian electric two-wheeler industry, as well as his contributions to various forums in the electric vehicle sphere, both in India and globally. Mr. Rajiv Vij is the chairman and managing director of Carzonrent, which he founded in 2001 with a team of like-minded professionals in partnership with the world's largest car rental brand, Hertz. A hands-on professional in this segment, he spearheaded the expansion of Hertz in India, and in a short period of 4 years, has taken the organization to the #1 position in car rentals in India. Mr. Pawan Jain is the logistics guru of India, having served the Indian supply chain and logistics industry immensely over the past 4 decades. Currently, he serves as chairman of Safexpress, which he founded in '97 for undertaking activities in supply chain logistics at a time when the industry was at a very nascent stage and full of challenges. He has been conferred with numerous prestigious awards for his relentless efforts and contribution to the industry, which includes Lifetime Achievement Award by ESC, Distinguished Entrepreneurship Award by PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Retail Leadership Award by Asia Retail Congress, among others. Mr. Ramesh Dorairajan is responsible for sales, marketing, and customer care for electric vehicles at Tata Motors. He also heads network management and trade finance for Passenger Vehicles Business Unit. Ramesh began his career with Ashok Leyland Finance, post which he worked with Reliance Industries and JCB at different levels. He joined Tata Motors in 2011. He's a graduate in economics and law and has completed his executive program in business management from IIM Kolkata in 2007. During his tenure with Tata Motors, he continues contributing to expanding the network to increase additional touch points and has also ensured increasing market share of Tata Electric Motors vehicles above 70%. Mr. Koushik Bhattacharya is the Executive Director and Head Industrials at Avendus Capital at Mumbai and leads the industrials vertical of the investment banking business. At Avendus, he is responsible for building relationships with entrepreneurs, corporate houses, and global conglomerates, and advises them on merger and acquisitions and PE transactions from origination to closure. He is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and IIT ISM Dhanbad. Mr. Mehul Shah is Vice President Transport, a business unit for Exide Leclanche Energy Private Limited, and is the business unit head with profit and loss responsibility at NextCharge. With over 29 years of experience in industry, he has expertise in manufacturing operations and business with profit and loss in automotive and light medium engineering multinational corporations. He completed his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and holds a diploma in management and a diploma in finance. He was associated with the electrical industry and Tier 1 and Tier 2 automotive industry with companies like Molex, Delphi Connection Systems, Active, ABB, and Raychem in various capacities, heading business development, plant operations, and P&L responsibility. Welcome all of you to this panel discussion. Over to Mr. Arun Duggal, who would be moderating this panel discussion. Mr. Duggal.
Hemant, many thanks for your kind introduction of the panelists. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to moderate this discussion on outlook for EV business with this distinguished group of eminent panelists who have deep personal knowledge and experience in this area. The conversation will cover where we are now in this EV ecosystem, but also we'll talk about a perspective on where we are likely to be in the next few years. As I mentioned earlier, we at CERCA are very interested in decarbonization of automotive sector in India to reduce air pollution and climate change impact. Let me start with Koushik asking a very basic question. Koushik, the EV ecosystem has many connected and interdependent pieces, such as batteries, components, OEMs, charging infrastructure, sustainable grid, financing for a purchase of vehicles, etc. Could you please comment on what stage of development these different pieces are at and what needs to be done to better synchronize them for rapid adoption and growth of EV sector? Koushik?
Sure. Thanks, Arun, for including me in this panel. With respect to your question, Arun, I look at the EV ecosystem as a sum total of 4 parts, put very simply. OEs, component manufacturers, infrastructure providers, the CPOs and the swapping solution providers, and the providers of e-mobility as a service. And then there are other enablers like policymakers, financing institutions, the academic community, and several others. Now, the 4 core parts that I spoke about, OE, component, infrastructure, and e-mobility as a service. I think the first, while all the parts are intertwined, I think the first 2 parts are more interlinked to each other, and infrastructure and e-mobility as a service are interlinked to each other. I think in terms of development and adoption in India, I think the OE ecosystem is probably the most developed relatively. There are quite a few players who are into that segment, and more players are entering that space. Naveen is a leader in that space, so he can comment more. But in my mind, that is a direct play on the Indian consumer story, who are realizing the total cost of ownership benefit in a meaningful way as the tailwinds around subsidies, around the high fuel costs come about. And that's going to drive the adoption there. We are probably the most bullish on that space. It's also a simple business model to understand. It's driven by consumer demand. It's a easy model to understand. So that's on the OE side. On the component side, localization as a meaningful effort has really started recently. So that part is still slightly underdeveloped. And in fact, apart from battery, most of the other parts are being supplied by guys who are already into the ICE ecosystem. So you won't find too many pure play EV component manufacturers. Battery is a different ball game altogether. I think we'll have to see how the battery landscape evolves in India, because till now we don't have cell manufacturing. People are talking about putting up cell manufacturing facilities, but as of now, it's largely around battery assembly. So that's going to be a very critical piece. But component, in my mind, is a much lesser developed and a much more nascent space than OEs. The third part is infrastructure, which is CPOs and swapping solution providers. There we face the classic, chicken and egg problem, which is around, the OE ecosystem has to develop for these guys to sweat their assets until these guys, build out the infrastructure, the OE ecosystem can't foster. So, we are seeing participation from a few CPOs and swapping solution providers. But again, someone needs to put in capital ahead of time in this space for it to kind of really get to a meaningful scale where the OEs and the consumers do not have to think about the charging problem. I think the last one, to wrap up my answer, e-mobility as a service, I think it's a direct play on TCO. It's after OEs, it's probably the next most intuitive way to play the TCO theory in EVs. The only piece around it is the capital intensity. So this I'm bullish about this piece till the time there is someone with a business model who can aggregate various parts of the business and make it a capital light model. And we also have Rajiv here who can comment more about this business because this is closer to what he's looking at doing. But this e-mobility as a service till now is very nascent, very few guys. But this is a great play on the cost benefits in the EV ecosystem. So that's how I look at this space.
Thank you, Koushik. Thank you for a very interesting observation on the interconnectivity and interdependence of different parts of the ecosystem. You mentioned about batteries. I think that clearly is a key area which will determine the direction of this business. Obviously, the battery costs have come down significantly in the last 5 years. May I ask Mr. Mehul Shah if you could comment on various battery technologies and how do you see development of battery manufacturing in India, particularly the role the recent PLI schemes may play in this sector? We know that in China, CATL, a 10-year-old company, has emerged as the largest battery manufacturer in the world with a market cap of $200 billion. Do you see, Mr. Shah, major battery manufacturers emerging in India? Also, if you could comment on the role and possibility of battery swapping in India. Mr. Shah?
Yeah, good morning again, all the panelists and Mr. Duggal. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity to me to be part of this discussion. We at Exide Leclanche Energy Private Limited are very much into this particular direction and working very aggressively in terms of making the battery make in India part of the story, Atmanirbhar Bharat or make in India story. What we do is currently we are importing the cells from China and then subsequently making all the battery pack manufacturing, where remaining all the parts which goes into the pack, these are all developed, produced or sourced locally in India. So to a larger extent, including the BMS, everything is being owned by Exide Leclanche, our own product technology, except the cells. As part of the PLI scheme introduced. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Much better.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience. And as part of the PLI scheme from the government of India, which is announced, we are also part of the cell manufacturing bidding process, where we would go for the cell manufacturing of various chemistries, I would say, whether it is NMC or LFP or NCA. LTO currently we are not looking at because our equity partner and the technology partner Leclanche is very much into making the LTO cells back in Switzerland and Germany. So that's how we are placed, and we are very much eager to take this opportunity in next couple of years from now, where both our equity partners are very much inclined about going forward for this particular venture in the cell manufacturing. Coming back to the battery, which is contributing around 60% to 65% of the product cost as far as the electric vehicle is concerned. This is something which is very, very important, very critical. And I'm proud to say that Exide Leclanche has mastered this technology over a period of last few years in terms of delivering the product successfully in India across all the vehicle segments, whether it is two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, buses, or railways, off-highway equipments, diggers, or AGVs, which is primarily used in the logistics services and the warehousing applications. If we look at the market, which is poised to grow over a period of the next 7 years, we see that the CAGR at which the market is going to grow is around 69%. I'm referring a report from IESA, which says the EV market is going to grow 69% from 2020 to 27%. And the electric vehicle is going to grow at a CAGR of 51% over a period of the same time. This means by 2027, the total vehicle which would be required is 51 million, which is considered to be EV, and the total demand would be 335 gigawatt hour by 2027, which is what is very, very encouraging for any one of us to look at this. And this is going to be one of the single biggest contributor, in my opinion, for all our initiatives in terms of making this environment clean and make carbon-free footprint to given to be to the country.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. It certainly is probably the most important area in the EV development. And I do hope that battery manufacturing in the country would lead the pace at which the EV industry develops. Could I now turn to Mr. Munjal to talk about the biggest and most advanced EV sector, that is the two-wheeler sector. We see a very interesting landscape with different players following different strategies and price points. Ather, Ola Electric, Hero, TVS, Bajaj, and others are taking somewhat different approaches. Mr. Munjal, how do you see this market evolving in the next 5 years? And what is Hero Electric's strategy in this sector? Also, if you could compare and contrast the two-wheeler industry development as compared to China and Vietnam.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Duggal. Thank you for having me here. Very interesting points that you brought up, Koushik, and very happy to hear about your developments, Mr. Shah, on the batteries for the Exide. Now, just to give you a perspective of what's happening in the country, and then I'll come to China and Vietnam. So when you look at electric mobility, first and foremost, you have to divide it up into different baskets. The requirements of each sector, each basket are going to be very different from each other. So two-wheelers, three-wheelers, cars, commercial vehicles, public transport, etc. They all have different needs in terms of infrastructure, and they will all take off at a different time in their whole life cycle. Now, two-wheelers are the low-hanging fruit for various reasons, that there is a lot of price parity which is already achieved with two-wheelers. Distances covered are less than what it is for a number of other vehicles. Thereby, the infrastructural requirements are not as large as it would be for the larger form of vehicles, etc. Plus, India is a very, very large two-wheeler market. 80% of the vehicles on the road actually are the two-wheelers. And that's what's going to convert first. And that's what we believe is going to form the base of the pyramid. On top of that base, there is going to be other forms of mobility which will come in. So that's what's going to give scale to the entire industry, the two-wheeler industry. That's the first. The second is that when we look at the push, the tailwinds that we have with us now, those are extremely strong. So when you look at it from a policy standpoint, we've got the central policy, which is FAME 2, which came into effect in 2019, And that FAME 2 has undergone a revision last month, just in June alone. And that revision is going to result in a sector actually taking off in a very, very large manner. Now, there are various reasons why it's going to take off in that manner. So basically, to give you the fundamental, FAME 2 policy states was giving about 10,000 rupees per kilowatt hour with a capping of 20% on dealer price. And the policy was to 2022. Now what's happened is that 10,000 has become 15,000. The capping has gone up to 40% of your ex-dealer price, and that 2022 has gone up to 2024. This resulting in these city speed vehicles as we define them, which are going to be the belly of the market. City speed vehicle is a vehicle which will go about 45 to 55 kilometers an hour speed. These vehicles becoming cheaper than the low speed category broadly. Now, these vehicles becoming cheaper, there's again going to be a shift, that gradual shift that happens. But the more interesting one that's going to happen is that these vehicles now will be highly financed because they're registered vehicles, which was a challenge till last year. So what we anticipate the market to turn out is last year till 2021, the market was about 70% in the low speed category. This year onwards, for the next few years, it's probably going to be about 70 to 80% in the higher speed categories. And belly of the market, like I said, is going to be the city speed. So it's a very, very interesting shift. And also there's a shift to higher range vehicles. So people are looking now because of the batteries, because more batteries you put in, there is a subsidy on it, and that's going to result in people putting in more batteries on the vehicle. The other point is the other push that's there is also to do with the state policies. So we have 16 state policies which already are in place. A lot of them are manufacturing led. So if you actually go and manufacture in that state, you will get some SOPs. Whereas a number of them actually are very, very strong with the demand creation state policies. For example, we've got Delhi, we've got Gujarat, we've got Maharashtra, with the latest one being Rajasthan. And like this, there are a number of states which are stepping up on top of the central policy. That's the first. Then when we look at the future outlook, how this market's going to shape up, we expect this market to be a minimum of about 20% of the total IC engine two-wheeler market in the next 5 years. So by 2026, that's going to be about 4 million units. 40 lakh units is what we are projecting in the next couple of years. Now, of course, this number could go up depending on certain factors falling in place. Some of the issues which still exist, one of them is financing. It's still coming in, but it's not here yet in a meaningful manner. The second is awareness. So awareness is still poor when it comes to electric mobility. That's something that is coming. That is also, again, there's a lot of work on that area. Now, when we talk about the industry, when we talk about markets like China and Vietnam, what's happening there? China is a very different story. China has already got about 300 million electric vehicles on the road today. They sell about 27 odd billion electric two-wheelers on every year. But China's story was a carrot and stick approach. So what they did actually is a number of cities did banned or did not allow the sale of IC engine two-wheelers. That has continued in a number of cities. In some cities, that's opened up. And parallelly, what they did is that they gave you subsidy as for the customer and created a very dense infrastructure. Now, that's resulted in the market really taking off in that space. Vietnam is still very far behind. Vietnam is a population of about 100 odd billion people, and half of them actually own a two-wheeler, but not very strong policies at this point of time. So there is going to be a shift that we're going to see in Vietnam as well. But at this point, probably in India, we've got much stronger policies than what Vietnam does. And we found that any country where you actually go to push electric or conversion to electric, you need to have very strong policies in place. Now, what is missing in India and how we see this shaping up, charging infrastructure is a limitation, but that's more of a range anxiety issue. So what we as a company are doing is we are creating a charging infrastructure, which is a basic but dense charging infrastructure. For customers, we've already installed about 1,600 charging stations. The idea is to take it up to 20,000 or partner with companies who would then install the charging infrastructure for our customers. And that's going to be universally open. The other thing is reskilling of the workforce, so which we're already doing again. So what we started doing is the roadside mechanics. We started skilling them on how to handle electric vehicles. They didn't quite understand electric earlier. Now we've started training them up on how to handle electric. And that's a very important factor. We've already trained about 6,000 of them. Idea is to take it up to about 25,000 of them in the next in the next 2 years. And that's then going to have a ripple effect. And that's how we are going to grow that whole ecosystem. So in my final words, I believe the time is here for electric to really take off in India. And we're going to see huge changes now going forward. So this is the time when we are actually going to see that what we call as hockey stick growth in terms of, and then there's going to be localization coming in. There's already the push. Infrastructure will fall in place. It's a matter of chicken and egg situation. We're already seeing the volume growth, and B2B is going to have a very, very important role to play going forward. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. I have a follow-up question for you. Your comment about financing got my attention. As you know, I'm a former banker, so obviously interested in the role financing can play in development of this sector. I know several parts of the government, Niti Aayog, various ministries are involved in supporting this sector, advancing this sector, as well as the state government. Do you have any sense whether Reserve Bank of India and the banking sector has also focused on how to promote this sector?
Mr. Duggal, what's going to happen is, when I was talking about, so that's been a huge challenge so far. We anticipate this challenge to actually go away now, because since we are seeing a shift happening from the unregistered vehicles. So the issue earlier was to do with the unregistered vehicles, no registration, no license, no road tax. And so how do you traceability of the vehicles was a challenge with the banks and with the NBFCs. That I believe now is going to be done away with, simply because we are shifting into the city speed category. As we shift into city speed category, these vehicles are registered, licensed, and they've paid road tax, etc. In which case, traceability of these vehicles becomes more interesting. The second factor which has been there is been, again, a chicken and egg. The volume has been too small for the large banks to really to open the door fully. So they've kept their foot on the door, but not opened it fully. The NBFCs have stepped up in a lot of ways, but they don't have the wherewithal when it comes to a countrywide pan-India network, etc. That has been a challenge so far, but I believe that's a challenge which will get addressed now. We've also got CESL, which is the government, which is a part of the ESL, which is promoting electric vehicles in a number of states for the state employees, but in some states, even for regular customers as well. So it's been a challenge so far, but I think it's going to get addressed now.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal.
Thank you.
May I now request Mr. Jain? Could you please share your views on the transition to EVs in the logistic industry? I understand that in Safexpress, you're running a pilot of converting some 5-year-old small commercial vehicles to electric vehicles. Cities like Delhi and others are placing restrictions on diesel small commercial vehicle due to air pollution concerns. What, Mr. Jain, is the outlook for EVs in the logistic industry? Also, if you could share with us Safexpress's hub and spoke system and the motivation aspect that you once described to me of from Chalak to Malak approach for the people who are working with you. Mr. Jain?
Yeah, thank you, Arunji. Thank you very much for inviting me on this panel. To your question, I'm purely from the service side, and hence I can share views on the logistics services, not at the manufacturing side of the vehicle, and purely restricted to the logistics and commercial cargo vehicle. My view on this is, especially for India, is very, very positive. It has to have a commercial vehicle you will see very soon running on the road across India, especially in the sector of first mile and last mile delivery. Because the bigger trucks, long haulage will definitely be a distant dream. But for the first mile pickup and the last mile delivery, where we cover roughly 100 and 120 kilometers per day, will be very soon. We can see few and good number of percentage across India. A few companies, including Tata Motors, Mahindra, are thinking and developing these vehicles, and we are very keen to induct in our fleet across India. As far as the 5, we just started experimenting to fit metro in our 4-wheelers, small 4-wheelers, Tata Ace, with the battery pack and we are trying. It's a mix of many, because of Indian conditions. To deliver anything in India, especially in metro towns, a lot of congestion is there, and we are not finding very suitable to our need at this moment, especially in metro. But if we probably will go into mini metro or smaller towns, probably we can get some support out of these metro vehicles. The very important thing at this moment, to my mind, to deliver something is per se commercial cargo in these four-wheelers, and to adoption and conversion from today's commercial diesel vehicles to this is cost. Cost to acquire this vehicle in logistic industry is exorbitant today. Anybody, whosoever is there, is in price sensitive logistic service market. Adoption of these vehicles is definitely a cause of concern. The second is definitely charging of these vehicles at hub. If you are running only one shift whole day, and the evening they will come back in the hub, and then you can put on the charging whole night and can start in the morning or midway, or maybe battery swap. These things are available, but to my mind the most suitable will be charging at hub, because normally in pickup and delivery in all over India, these vehicles are just used one single shift whole day, 9 to 9 you can say, and while returning back in the evening to the hub, you can create infrastructure to get them charged. So that's possible. But to solution to these points is, to my mind, if somebody can come forward, like some bankers or NBFC or some finance companies, or some innovation will come on this, that somebody can start giving these vehicles to the user on per kilometer acquisition cost, maintenance, charging, and everything put together, and can charge only on per kilometer, per mile rupee value, so that acquisition will be nil to the entrepreneur or who is running as a single truck owner or a fleet owner. And that will be the wonder program, and many more numbers can get added very instantly to the fleet, to the small truck owners across India. This is my mind. As far as ours is Malak to Chalak is concerned, or Chalak to Malak, I'm sorry, to scheme is concerned, we started working on youth and who are unemployed across India. Normally 10+2 kind of education, and we mobilized them from the villages and we got them into a bigger cities, gave them training, and procured them for the driving licenses for the trucks, and we gave them a truck fully built, kind of Tata Ace and Leland, those kind of smaller trucks, and they are entrepreneur, owner, agent for Safexpress, and they are running across India in different cities. The maintenance and the diesel cost is for them, but we provide the business, and they park these vehicles across in our hub. They work from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, and they get the remuneration what they do. And the total cost of these trucks goes to Safexpress, and we have got the arrangement with them that after 5 years of completion of services, they will get this reward of the truck free to them. And these are now 3,500 in numbers. These young youth across India, different community, caste, creed, culture, came to our system. They are our partners. They are not directly employed with the company, but they are the proud owner of the Tata Ace and Leland, those of the kind. They deliver, they get much more, and they earn at times 50,000, 45,000 a month, because it's a clear-cut scheme. You get what you do, and that's going on. And this number is increasing, and we are adding these vehicles across India every single day. 500 vehicles we are adding every single year to our system of this particular partnership kind of program. So that's going on. As far as the commercial vehicle, the bigger vehicles are concerned, I think that's a distant dream. Um, I mean, trunk route vehicles from Delhi to Mumbai on battery will be a time-taking job. But yes, first mile and last mile within the city, you can see very shortly some good number, maybe 15%, 20% by 2026. You can see good number flying across India. That's my take, Arun.
Thank you, Pawanji. I will now request Mr. Rajiv Vij to share your views on transition to electric vehicles in the commercial auto segments, the fleets, the employee transportation business, the airport business, intercity, intracity, etc. How do you see this transition taking place? Also, please comment on the charging infrastructure that you see would be required for this transition.
Thank you, Mr. Duggal, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this discussion and meet up with the stalwarts from the industry. Very heartening to hear from Naveen and Pawanji and of course Mehul about what's happening. Koushik, of course, explained where this industry is, and good to know that Koushik is excited and is positive about where this industry is going to go, because he's the one who is going to help entrepreneurs get the money to invest in these businesses. Uh, let me uh, let me share with you what are we really looking at when we talk of the commercial car industry. You know, as of now, if you look at this industry, the total industry size is about 1.6 million vehicles. That's the size of this industry. Generates almost 15-16 billion dollars of revenue. The and you know, except for Delhi and Mumbai, where some years back the CNG was introduced, all the other vehicles are almost entirely diesel vehicles. And you know, diesel is clearly considered as the most polluting kind of fuel. In the last 3-4 years, and you know, my experience of looking at EVs has been since looking at Chetan Mani coming up with E2O vehicle, and you know, we looking at whether we can induct that vehicle into our fleet, and then the Verico coming. I think what has happened in the last many years, and you know, Tata Motors have of course done a fantastic job in moving ahead on this car segment particularly, and you know, coming up with very good vehicles. I think what has happened is that in the last 3-4 years, if you look at our industry, the total induction has been less than 2,000 vehicles. And that is sad. I mean, you know, when you look at a 1.6 million strong industry, only 2,000 vehicles getting inducted over a 3-4 year period. But I don't know whether we can really blame the players in the mobility part of this business, because the fact is the product was not available. The products that were available on the ground, they were offering a battery range 60-70 kilometers. Now 60-70 kilometers is a disaster for any kind of mobility operation in the commercial car industry. And also the fact is that if your vehicle does not run at least 120, 130, 140 kilometers per day, the total cost of ownership becomes a huge challenge, because then your ability to recover the initial higher cost that you pay for acquiring this vehicle, that getting compensated with the savings that you are likely to take on fuel, is something which will take be the entire life cycle of that car, and therefore nobody really wanted to get into it. Only a couple of players got into it. They were funded thanks to Koushik and his friends in the investment banking industry. But that's all that happened. And they also had very little choices. They had to invest on purchasing cars. They had to invest on setting up dedicated charging infrastructure. And that, pardon my saying, that for vehicles which were really not tomorrow's EV technology. That was yesterday's EV technology. In fact, these players who invested, therefore, while the investors put in money into those players, they all lost money immensely, and the pandemic has not done any favor to them. It has been very, very cruel because all the vehicles were also inducted in the employee transportation business. And the reason that they were inducted there, because everybody saw that there the opportunity to run the vehicle for maybe 150 kilometers, maybe 200 kilometers a day is a real opportunity, and therefore let's do this. The operation was also such that after every trip, the vehicle would come and stand at a particular place, whether the hub or the customer's premises, and there you can have a captive charging station where it can get charged over the next 1-2 hours, and then it is ready to take another trip of 50-60 kilometers. But that is not car rental industry. That is not commercial car industry. Commercial car industry is much more. And I have been having discussions with all the manufacturers, and Ramesh will bear me on this. We've had discussions on saying that we need vehicles which give us a clear 250 kilometer range in a single full charge, and the battery can be charged in about a 1 hour kind of time with a fast charger. Now that the good thing is that has started becoming visible. Tata Motors has some cars available in the market. Tata Motors is also bringing in some more car models which will become available. But there are also other manufacturers. MG have come out with their car with their ZS EV, which has a range of about 350 odd kilometers. BYD is coming up with vehicles which have a range between 300 to 450 kilometers. These vehicles have now started becoming available, and maybe PSA will come out with their car with about a 250 kilometers plus range sometime early next year. There are more manufacturers and there are more car models that will come out from the existing OEMs. Another, I think, development which is a very interesting development that has happened, and I think that is in the charging infrastructure part of the industry. In the charging infrastructure, while there was no choice that anybody had till recently, that they had to invest into captive charging infrastructure. Now the charging infrastructure companies, having seen that because not too many cars are coming on the road, they are more willing to set up charging infrastructure and work with mobility players to provide them access to that charging infrastructure at reasonable costs, so that the TCO mathematics does not get into a challenge again. So that has become available, and that industry, of course, it will also, charging infrastructure industry is also a very capital intensive industry. It will again need money. As of now, they are all taking money. The Indian guys are all taking money from banks and wherever else, and therefore they also have that cost, which is a high cost finance. But if they could get money where they could set up large charging infrastructure, as Koushik said, this is a chicken and egg issue. They have to invest into setting up infrastructure. OEMs have to make vehicles which are relevant for the industry to make them available, and the mobility industry has to then induct those vehicles and transition from a polluting diesel vehicle to a clean EV vehicle into this industry. The customers are wanting to move, because as long as you can give to this customer the same price, the same service, and you also on top of it give him this feeling that he's saving some carbon footprints, he's meeting his ESG rating requirements. The customers are very happy, and large number of these customers who took these earlier 2000 vehicles also, these are American and European companies. They are all very, very keen to move there. Even some of the Indian companies in the IT space want to move to clean energy. They are wanting to get rid of these polluting vehicles and move there. We also feel that, and Pawanji talked about this Chalak to Malak, and I'm reminded of my own story as to what we did at Carzonrent many years back. We started doing this in 2004, and so when Ola and Uber came and started talking about aggregation, I used to laugh and say that, but this is something which we did many years back, because this is a very enterprising industry. You have to give opportunity to this guy who may not be very educated, but who has that enterprising spirit. He becomes your salesman in the market. He develops your customer. He keeps your customer happy and comfortable. He makes sure that the vehicle is maintained well. He makes sure that the vehicle is always in good condition. Even if the vehicle meets with some challenge in terms of going to the workshop, this guy will stand there and take it out, because his earning is dependent on the revenue that this vehicle is generating on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. He also has a long-term interest in this asset. So this is something which works very well. We now have over 5,000 such guys all across India who are now owners of one or more vehicle, and they make their vehicles available on our platform. So we are also looking at that as the model as we look at transitioning. My understanding also is that the opportunity now is not only to transition one part of this commercial car industry. The opportunity is to transition the entire industry over the next few years. While some of the things might happen because of regulation, there are of course challenges, because the customers, the owners of these cars, they have invested into those cars. They are used to using those cars for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. They don't want to sell off those cars, and the retrofitment, etc., is something which is maybe not a very feasible thing. But I think there are 2-3 things that are required, and I'll end my my inputs on this with this comment. I think one is that the OEMs have to bring in more and more vehicles with a range of 250 kilometers plus on the ground. The OEMs will also have to look at bringing in addressing issues which are challenging this industry. One of the things, and once you have a vehicle which gives a 250 kilometer range, the range anxiety is addressed. But every buyer of the vehicle is still very worried about what will be the residual value of this vehicle at the end of the tenure. How many years will it run? The OEMs are being very, very careful in while saying that yes, the residual value will improve, but we are not willing to make any commitments. Now, if the OEM is not willing to make a commitment, how do you expect a customer to accept that the residual value is going to be similar to what is going to happen, what is happening in the IC part of the industry? That I think is important. I think another thing that could work very well in our industry is what is going to happen about the second use of the battery at the end of the tenure. Is there a proposition that can happen that at the end of the tenure, these vehicles, because these are not polluting vehicles, the government will perhaps permit them to run, instead of for a 5-year permit, they can run for a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year. Maybe the scrappage policy will or will not operate on them. But is it possible to refurbish these cars with new batteries at the end of a 5-year period? Will an OEM come forward and make those commitments? Will an OEM come forward and make a proposition which includes, as Pawanji said, which includes offering these vehicles to the industry with funding, where the vehicle is available for flying in this industry on the basis of a per day, per week, per kilometer, per month, I don't know what, but some kind of model, because because of the recent disruption in the industry and the finance industry's view about funding the vehicles, there is a need for funding of vehicles for individual owners. They also don't have very high credit ratings, they don't have great CIBIL scores, but they need to get vehicles, they need to drive. Ola and Uber are also wanting that their vehicles should be able to shift, but their drivers are not in a position to provide the kind of financial documents that are required for an NBFC or a bank to fund. So I think some of those things will help in driving the transition. And you were asking about whether RBI is doing anything or not. I don't think RBI is even looking at this as of now, but perhaps we need to ask RBI to look at this as a priority sector and instruct banks and financial institutions and provide them money at a lower cost, because that is what will drive. And it's the transition of these parts of the economy to an EV is a critical issue for us as a country also, not only because of pollution but also because of geopolitical issues. We need to move to there, but that I think every arm of the government will also have to come up. I mean, subsidies are great, they are helping, central subsidies, state subsidies, everything is very good, but I think funding is also something that will help a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for a broad perspective on various issues and impressing upon the urgency on which some of the things need to get done. You have actually given a very good segue to Mr. Dorairajan to talk about Tata Motors plans and for commercial vehicles, commercial cars, and Mr. Jain had also mentioned that we need product for the first mile, last mile delivery of goods. So if I could request Mr. Dorairajan to comment on that.
So thank you, Mr. Duggal, and good afternoon to all panelists. I heard Mr. Vij very closely, and we have been interacting over the past couple of weeks, and he's been giving his perspective of what is the requirement of the market. First of all, about Tata Motors, at this point of time, you would all be aware that we have vehicles both in the commercial range, I'm talking about the car segment, and also in the personal range of vehicles. We have sold close to 7,500 plus vehicles. That's both the Nexon, which is in the personal segment, and the Tigor, which is in the commercial segment. As far as we are concerned, and we've been doing some very close study with agencies on our own, through our network and various different partners, etc. We believe that this is still in a nascent stage and still in a growing up stage. And I think if we have to grow quickly, we need launch of more accessible electric vehicles. We obviously need more infrastructure, what everyone has been talking about, especially the charging infrastructure, reducing the price gap between the ICE vehicle and the electric cars. And obviously the inherent benefits of EV in terms of operating cost and maintenance cost needs to be spelled out very clearly for the end consumer. We've seen in recent times, and I can tell you that there's been an encouraging growth, and we have been seeing that growth in Tata Motors itself, where the total cost of ownership for the EV vis-a-vis the ICE vehicle is much lower. For example, in our working, it's very clear that if you run an ICE vehicle for say about 12,000 kilometers, I'm talking about the personal segment in a year, and as compared to that, if you run an EV, though your acquisition cost in the initial stage could be slightly higher, you save close to about 80,000 rupees per year on the overall maintenance and as far as the fuel charges are concerned. So we have a feeling that if And as Mr. Vij very clearly said, that in the commercial segment, people would be looking at anywhere upwards of 230 to 250 kilometer range of vehicle. Today in the commercial segment, and as we say that one of the things is range, and is range anxiety there? Yes. We started off about 2.5, 3 years back with the commercial range of vehicles. We started off with about 140 kilometers, and that I'm talking about the ARAI certification, up to 165, and then now up to 213. And we are working our way up to go further and further up to meet the demands of the people who use it as a taxi and as an earn and pay concept. Similarly, in the personal segment, as far ARAI certification is concerned, a Nexon is certified at 312 kilometers, and in real world, it should be at around anywhere between 235 to 250 kilometers, depending on where you are driving, etc. We find that, and generally our research and our study, etc., and the people whom we have sold these vehicles, we have studied that broadly they come under three categories. The people who have been the early adopters of our vehicles in the personal segment. One has been who is the performance seeker. Generally, these are the young owners who take vehicles for a driving pleasure and want a sporty handling of the vehicles, etc. And a large portion of them are those techies and those working in the knowledge industries who would fall in this bracket. The second set of people are the maintenance seekers, the people who are looking at slightly lower cost of maintaining the vehicle. These owners look for low fuel maintenance expenses inherent in that is there in Nexon EV. And several of these owners charge their vehicles from rooftop solar panels, and this we have found out to be pretty popular in states like Kerala, etc. The third are the environmentalists. These are the users who are generally very highly educated, scientifically inclined, and highly concerned about the ongoing environmental degradation of the atmosphere, etc. These users have chosen our vehicle because they seek to reduce their carbon footprint, and we are seeing a large number of doctors who have been buying. Initially, when we started selling these vehicles in the personal segment, this were probably the second or the third car in the family. Today, our data shows that more and more customers are preferring this as the first car in the family, which means that there seems to be a slight shift in the way people perceive this. Let me just shift my focus to the commercial segment, what Mr. Vij talked about. Yes, what he talked about are the challenges in getting funding from the banks, etc., and obviously the range. In a general concept, wherever, let it be a commercial vehicle or whether it was the Ola Uber concept, which also came in between during the discussions, it's very clear that as far as the customer is, as far as if it's a DC or a driver come owner, or it is owned by an agency and rented out to drivers, etc., the fact is there is an element of amount that the driver has to take back home after having cleared his EMIs and taking care of other maintenance and the fuel cost, etc. The fact of the matter is, once we are able to get to that scale in terms of the range, and if we are able to create the ecosystem, which we are working very, very closely with our group company to create more and more charging infrastructure, and I'll come to that separately, I have a feeling that we should be slowly but surely ensuring that more and more people get into it. Of late, in the last 6 months, I have been talking to lots and lots of people. And what people want, the corporates or the government agencies, are what is called as the aggregator model, or you call it a wet lease, where they say that you give me the vehicle with everything and I'm happy with it. Please ensure that I am able to drive a vehicle with peace of mind. I have absolutely no strings attached, etc. We also, by the way, I must tell you that we also have a subscription model, which is gaining popularity. It's not that we sell hundreds and thousands, but it's gaining popularity, wherein the overall cost, if you look at it over a period of 18 to 24 months, we have tweaked it in such a way that it is lower than actually the financing cost if you want to take a vehicle on that. As far as the commercial segment is concerned, our Tigor range of vehicles, I think we won't pray that there is a COVID again, but this COVID actually has stunted what could have been probably a fair bit of growth that we could have seen in this segment. Of course, we now are beginning to see some amount of green shoots appearing, some of the corporates opening up slowly, etc. But only time would tell as people move forward, open up, and start looking at placing orders for vehicles. We at Tata Motors are doing everything possible to address various apprehensions that the customers would have, either in terms of charging infrastructure or ensuring that the vehicle, they have no anxiety range, etc. At this time, our best vehicle out there in the market, the Express T, would give you 213 kilometers, which is a certified range, which would in real world give you about 150, 160 kilometers, which may fall short of the expectation what Mr. Vij stated about 230, 240 kilometers. I also would like to talk on one more particular topic, and that is on the SCV segment, which of course I represent the passenger car segment, but that's on the commercial vehicle segment, is that I think the constant comparison is between how much would a driver be able to save or an owner be able to save as compared to the diesel cost. We find that if it is for short duration and SCVs run within the cities, etc., it is not very easy when you run in for short distances, unlike you run in for long distances, etc. These may not be very competitive, but I think as we move forward in technology and as we move forward in getting our acts better, we should be in a position to get more and more hold on this and do. We have started doing very well, and I think we should be able to get a hold. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the infrastructure segment. We found that in our initial studies, etc., that people were buying this vehicle more for intra-city travel. That is somebody who would travel for say 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers, etc. We provide a home charging solution with every vehicle sold. That's the next one. Every vehicle sold as a home charging fit at no cost to the customer. And the customer could charge his vehicle in the night at about 10 p.m. and then get ready at 6 p.m. to move out as far as work demands. We have found that's been a huge success. As far as connecting, people have now started saying, and we have had the trips where people have gone from Mumbai to Jaipur, Mumbai to Delhi, and all those travels, etc. We're only ensuring that most of the highways are getting connected as quickly as possible. A good combination of home charging solution plus fast chargers on the highways, etc., and the main arterial roads, etc. If we are able to crack that, and which we are hoping to crack very, very quickly, and we're going at a great speed on that, I have a feeling that this anxiety in terms of range, whether I would get stuck, etc., with my family, that will slowly but surely erode. As far as Tata Motors is concerned, I can assure that we have a good product plan that is coming up, a couple of new launches that will also happen over a period of time, etc., addressing all the issues that keeps coming up either when we attend certain panel discussions or with the customers, etc. But we are absolutely committed to a clean, pollution-free environment. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. Very encouraging to hear from you, and very encouraging to hear your plans. So I hope that Tata Motors will provide leadership in development of this sector. At this stage, maybe I will take a few minutes of your time, the industry leaders who are gathered here, to make a pitch for collaboration with the academic institutions, particularly with IIT Delhi. I would urge you to collaborate with us in the electric vehicle program that we are setting up and the expansion of this program in the coming years. I would urge you to take our students, graduating students. I would urge you, if you have some engineers in your business who would like to get a postgraduate master's degree in electric vehicle engineering, to apply for that to IIT Delhi. We will have some PhD scholars. We would urge you to give us opportunity for them to take up projects in your research projects in your organizations. We would also encourage you to maybe outsource some of your R&D efforts to IIT Delhi. We have tremendous amount of capability in terms of brain power, in terms of experience, in terms of hunger for developing new and innovative solutions. So please, as you think about the areas in which you need to get R&D done, we could be a outsource destination for your R&D. Over time, I would also like you to contribute to development of this industry by setting up labs in IIT Delhi and other IITs. And these labs could be in the battery technology area, in motors, in controllers, in electronic control systems, and other areas. This will not only connect you very well with the academic institutions, but you will make a contribution to the development of this industry, not only for your company, but broader EV ecosystem. So I would just urge you to embark on that collaboration. And Dr. Panigrahi, if you want to add something to that.
So thank you all the esteemed panelists, particularly from the industry and talking about various issues pertaining to the India-centric issues. Sir, as we have just now inaugurated this new MTech on electric mobility at IIT Delhi, and we are just starting it. So we need your kind blessing and support to take it forward. So to add something what Duggal sir has already mentioned, in offering this course, I need your help also sometimes, because we are very flexible. So we can invite any of you to offer a 1 credit course. For example, either you or any of your industry R&D partner or from your organization can take 1 hour lecture, that is a special lecturer in the module. So we have many provision on that module, so that our students will be exposed to the new technology. And not only this technology or the challenges, but also the entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is also another important criteria. So I look forward, as we are just starting, we'll take your suggestion from time to time, how to improve our course. And again, to have the Atmanirbhar Bharat or India-centric, that is the main idea. Why we need your blessing, we need your support in any form. Whatever Duggal sir already mentioned. It is an exchange, not the exchange of the money or CSR activity, but also the exchange of the technical skill, technical idea to our student. And of course, our student can go and take part in your industry in solving various issues. So that's why, sir, in this program also we are looking for some of the industry experts would come forward to take these classes. So thank you, sir, for all this, and I'm thankful to you. Hand it over to Sri Duggal.
Thank you, Professor Panigrahi. May I now request Professor Sagnik Dey to extend a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Duggal. So I want to express my sincere thanks to all the esteemed panelists who took time off from their extremely busy schedule to gather here and discuss the future of electric mobility in India. I also thank the delegates from industry, students, faculty, and representatives from research institutions and Government of India for participating in this very important event. I am sure that we all have gained immensely from today's panel discussion, and I'm confident that MTech program in electric mobility at IIT Delhi will provide several opportunities for industry and academia to collaborate on this important initiative, and we will see a bright future ahead for electric vehicles in India. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sagnik. Thank you all the attendees.